Before we begin, the title is written in the right-hand corner of the screen. Enjoy watching. The story starts with a guy proposing a breakup to his girlfriend. Elsa thought they had stepped away to be alone and enjoy this beautiful evening. But in the twilight of Friday night, at a party to celebrate the return of the Earl of Clermont's second son, she heard these words. Francois admitted that he's fallen out of love with her and doesn't want to be together anymore. He ruined her mood and wasn't afraid to tell her he'd been thinking about it for a long time. At that moment, the door opens, some girl walks up to them, and it's the one he traded his wife for. Is Adelaide, Francois's mistress, who forced him to break up with Elsa. She's sick of hiding and always thinking about making sure her lover's wife doesn't find out. The girl saw that Francois was afraid to talk about it, so she told it as it was. They loved each other and wanted to be together. Elsa hopes this is some kind of scary dream because she never thought he could do this to her. The girl believed him, but as it turned out, Francois took advantage of it, and for the last few years, he had been in love with someone else. He went on secret dates, and each time, he was less and less eager to return to his wife. After that, Elsa had the urge to hit that cheater with all her might, so that he would feel at least a little of the pain she had just experienced. The girl went up to him, and without hesitation, took revenge on the man for betraying her. The guy did not expect such a reaction. He fell to the floor and almost lost consciousness, because the blow was really not weak. Adelaide ran up to him at once. She took pity on him and began to resent Elsa, as if she could do such a cruel thing to him. The girl has no desire to find out about the relationship, to show her weakness and disappointment, so she just said she was breaking off the engagement. There's no point in being with someone who hasn't even apologized or tried to explain. Elsa said that if he had a conscience to tell the Marquis the news himself, and remember to mention the reason for the divorce. As soon as she started to leave, Adelaide ordered her to stop and told her that she would regret daring to hit her lover again. Actually, the mistress is lucky the girl didn't do the same to her. Elsa's got a good shot, and if she had a little more, everyone would be in trouble. The girl had to go back into the hall. At some point, it was like everyone conspired and looked in her direction. People noticed she was alone, because just now she was leaving with her husband and everything was fine. The lady didn't want to hide it and said that she had just broken off her engagement and from now on was a free girl. People just couldn't believe it because all these years, their couple has been a model relationship. The girls felt sorry for her and imagined how hard it was for her to talk about it now. For even when there were rumors that her husband had been seen with some girl, neither his wife nor other people had ever believed it. Everyone thought Francois was a faithful husband, incapable of doing what his wife had just found out a few minutes ago. In the end, so that it wouldn't be an excuse to ruin the event, the girlfriends suggested having a drink each to free their minds and not think about a person who didn't deserve it. Elsa decided that it shouldn't ruin her mood either. She looked at the situation from a different perspective and took it as a new start in her life. It was a little difficult at first, but with each drink it got easier and easier. The girl stopped noticing everyone around her and decided that from this day on, only those who were worthy of it would be in her life. She didn't notice how out of control she was, but no one made fun of her. The girls realize it's the only way she can keep from being sad after such a hard conversation. Afterwards, they looked towards Mr. Theodore, the protagonist of this party. He's surrounded on all sides, and most of them are girls who want his attention. The thing is, he hasn't shown up at any events for a long time. Everyone is wondering what the reason for his sudden return is. At some point, Elsa happened to look away, and in that second, her mood soured again. Francois and his mistress walked into the hall. They were immediately noticed by everyone else, and thought how dare he even do that. In fact, Elsa suspected him of cheating, but every time she made excuses for him. The girl saw him very often with Adelaide, and not only that, he just couldn't stop looking in her direction. Adelaide was very beautiful in a silk dress, with bright bows and ruffles. Perhaps because his wife thought he was her top choice and even a friend, she was constantly trying to turn a blind eye to everything that was going on. She believed him even when it was simply impossible. The girl clung to him and continued to imagine a happy family future. When she first saw him, she fell in love at first sight. She felt he was her man. He was very polite, complimented me and tried to please me, constantly suggested going on dates, surprised me and sent letters with nice words. Of course, after that, any girl would fall in love with him, but unfortunately, Elsa fell for the pretty picture and had no idea who this man really was or what he would do to her just a few years later. Just the way he smiled, he was the perfect guy she dreamed of marrying. But eventually, with each passing day, month, and year, she began to recognize him in a completely different way. If she had only known it would end in cheating, she would never have agreed to even one date. Elsa can't believe he could really do that to her. The girl ran outside and thought that if only time could be turned back again. She wants to go back to the day she first fell in love with his words and his smile. If that's possible, she wouldn't even talk to him and would do her best not to fall in love with him for anything. At one point, the girl accidentally twisted her leg, stopped, and cried even harder. She has only one thing left to do, to ask the Almighty to hear her plea, to show mercy and bring her back to that day. She said if he felt any pity for her, to do it right now. Elsa was so tired of crying and feeling betrayed that she simply fell asleep in the same spot amidst the vast field. Just a moment later, the lady felt herself in some other world. It was very much like a horrible dream. The girl sees the silhouette of a strange guy in front of her, who tells her that the end of her life has come. She doesn't understand what she has done wrong and why she is being punished. Elsa can't even move as suddenly the picture changes. The lady is in a different place. It's a cozy room with someone next to her who starts to calm her down. It turns out she's just having a bad dream. But where she is and what's going on is still unclear. At some point, she distinctly heard a man's voice, opened her eyes and saw her clearly not her husband in front of her. Elsa realizes she's heard that voice somewhere before. She abruptly got up from the bed and immediately recognized this guy. The girl doesn't understand how she ended up here and why he is the one next to her. The lady sees this room for the first time and realizes that now, this is definitely not a dream. In front of her is the same Theodore, in whose honor the recent event was held. Everyone calls him the wild dog Theodore, but at the same time, most girls are crazy about him. It was very strange that the girl was in the same room with him, and when she saw his smile, she began to worry, for she remembered nothing at all. Elsa remembered the breakup of the engagement, the conversation with her friends, and the way she ran home, and that was it. Auguste Theodore Jean de Clermont, second son of the illustrious Knight Count and the Emperor's younger sister, Countess Amelia. They had been at the academy together, and he had been the chief celebrant in the celebration at which the engagement was broken off. No matter how much she tries to remember now, she still can't. The memories are too fuzzy. The only thing that makes her glad is that she woke up with her clothes on, but what came before is starting to make her wary, especially at the sight of his smile. She starts to ask what happened between them, and in response, Theodore asks if she really doesn't remember anything. He brought her here after he found her unconscious in the garden. Theodore didn't pass by and decided to help. Elsa regretted having too many drinks, for if anyone saw her in this state, it wasn't good for her reputation. The girl wondered that no one but Mr. Theodore had even attempted to carry her to her room. They did spend a lot of time together at the academy, but she's pretty sure they never got close. In addition, the guy changed a lot during the knighting ceremony. He became uncontrollable, so they called him a wild dog because there is no other way to call him. It remains to be seen what reason he has for suddenly wanting to help her, and being so happy when she regained consciousness. And most importantly, why this wild dog began to call her mistress. The girl is sure that something happened between them, and very scary to think about it. She really wants to know, but at the same time she's afraid to ask the question. When suddenly, lest the girl should think anything too much of it, he said himself that nothing had happened between them. And that's when it got interesting. Theodore said that since it didn't work out yesterday, it had to happen now. Elsa started to get scared, but at the same time, unable to resist, she genuinely understands how to react to it. As soon as he started to let himself get too much, Elsa pushed him away and stepped right away from the bed. Now she has no desire to spend time with a guy who doesn't even ask her if she wants to or not. A girl doesn't plan to be with another man who can ruin her life, and one who will make her cry at night. As soon as Elsa reached the door, Theodore warned that they would meet again very soon, so you don't have to run far. Right after that, she ran to her assistant, who met her and asked her why she was so scared. Elsa closed the door behind her and asked to speak as quietly as possible. The woman doesn't understand what's wrong, and Mistress ignores her questions. At this moment, the lady thought she must conceal the fact that she had spent the night in the same room with Theodore, especially since it was right after her engagement broke up. So she said it was fine. The woman realized that it wasn't true, but still, She decided not to ask too many questions, because at the very least, it was none of her business. She offered to help tidy up Mistress. The girl agreed, and they ended up with a pretty good look for the day. There's no knight in the Raon Empire better than Elsa. Everyone knows her as the best in the business. Knight of the Raon Empire and Deputy Commander of the Knights, Elsa, heiress to the respected men who have always protected the royal family. There came a point when I realized there was no point in being upset and thinking about the past. And even if it takes her a little while to get over it, it's better than trying to get it back and missing the traitor. She has her own interesting life, and now she has more time to develop and make herself happy. You're gonna have to put your feelings aside for a while and do what you love. At that moment, Maris, the son of her mother's closest aide, who had grown up together like brother and sister, came up to her and said good morning. He came to compliment her and compared her to her mother in her best years. The girl thought it was too much, because to become as successful, she needed at least a few more years. After that, another girl came up to them, Lady Veronica. She was surprised that Elsa had the strength to come to the training session. Veronica recalled the party where the girl was out of control and allowed herself more than usual. She was embarrassed because she knew it, and when other people said it, she just wanted to turn around and hide somewhere else. Doesn't anyone realize that this is an inappropriate joke, and the girl herself realizes what she looked like at that moment? The most frustrating thing is that Veronica herself was not at the event, which means that rumors about the situation reached her as well. At some point, Veronica blurted out and said that Maris knew something else. Elsa looked at the guy and asked what it meant. The guy got embarrassed and advised Veronica that before she said something, she should think about whether or not she should do it or not. At this point, they tried to say goodbye and leave so as not to tell some secret, though it might just be information she might not like. They obviously don't want to upset her. The girl realized that there might be something going on in the office. She had a very bad feeling that some terrible news was being kept from her. She went into the office, but it's dark and no one's here. Then, the girl came into her office, which must be under a vast amount of paperwork, now looking as perfectly clean as it could be. At that moment, someone suddenly approached her, and it seemed to be the same wild dog she had just run away from. He recalled how he had warned that they would soon meet again. The guy asked to be formally introduced because last Friday, he was appointed Assistant Deputy Commander of the Knights. He says he's honored to work with a girl like her, and that's not all. He keeps calling her mistress for some reason. Elsa was surprised, for in fact she should be the one to address him like that and say such words to him. Right after that, the lady went to her commander to ask some questions and sort things out. The girl didn't even greet him and immediately asked what was even going on. In response, the man said that Elsa was right on time. He explained that she's the deputy commander of the Knights now, and about that guy, he said you can't leave a deputy's seat for that long. She was outraged that she made that guy an assistant without even consulting her, and if she had a choice, she never would have picked the dog. The commander replied that this assignment only meant that they all believed in her success. Elsa didn't understand anything and asked what he meant by that. And right after that, she simply asked to change her decision, because she is not ready to work with a man who, even during working hours, allows himself excessively. The commander hinted that nothing could be changed now, as the process had started and he didn't want to waste time on it. Elsa got angry and asked since when such issues were solved so quickly, because before it took at least a week. At some point, she started to look around and wondered how she could not notice what the commander had just been doing. He was wiping down a bottle that was considered one of the finest in the Empire. This dream drink for many people, which is only made in the Bel Air region. It seemed strange to her that the commander, who always chose cheap drinks, had a collection of such a rare beverage. She doesn't understand, because there's been too many of these situations lately. Elsa remembered that the Bel Air region is a territory that belongs to Claremont. The only thing that's clear is that everyone is in agreement and obviously hiding something. The girl just didn't have the strength to bear it. She approached Veronica and asked if she had anything to tell her. The girl replied that she didn't know, and didn't know anything, and also that she had absolutely no idea what it was all about, because she was just doing her job and not listening to any rumors. Elsa wouldn't let her go and hinted that if she didn't tell her anything, she would soon regret it very much. At that moment, Maris entered the office. He saw the showdown and was surprised so much that he even dropped important documents. He thought he probably should have come by a little later. The guy was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Probably asked him for help, but Elsa beat her to it. She walked up to him and started asking lots of questions. Like if he knew about the new assistant. If so, why didn't he say anything? At which point Veronica stands behind her and shows him not to say anything. Eventually, he confessed that last night they had suddenly received an official notice. It stated an urgent matter that had better not be postponed. Maris explained that if they could, they would put it off until later, since the workday was already over. But there was an imperial sadness on the notice that they simply had no right to ignore. Elsa does not understand, since when the imperial family interferes in the affairs of the knights, she is sure it was done on purpose, and the moment she was absent from the party, she remembered that the deputy commander's schedule is not easy to obtain. If anyone could have open access to her schedule and help Theodore for profit, it can only be one person. The girl has no doubt that she has almost solved this riddle. Meanwhile, her assistant came to the Empress and told her that a knight named Elsa wanted to speak to her. Her Majesty had long wanted to see this girl, so she let her in at once. Elsa has been given permission to speak to the Empress, and it seems the conversation is going to be very serious. She greeted Her Majesty, and in response, the Empress immediately asked if the girl liked her gift. But is it really about who Elsa came here for? She immediately realized what the Empress had to do with this matter. And surely that assistant dog was the gift the Empress had asked about. As the future Empress, already at such a young age, she has a wide knowledge of diplomacy and politics. Daughter of the Raoun Empire and royal lady, Mary Josephine Clare, also known as the Princess, the Empress threw the apple on the floor and asked if she didn't like such a lovely gift. Elsa tries to hold back, but realizes that at some point, she's just going to run out of patience. Maria explained that it was a gift in honor of a failed relationship. According to the Empress, the girl may consider her assistant as a future husband. The girl didn't think that Maria wouldn't even hide then and would tell right away what she was doing it for. Eventually, the conversation turned into a discussion of marriage dissolution. Someone clearly didn't think about the fact that, for Elsa, it wasn't a topic she wanted to discuss, especially with the Empress, because it's none of her business, and she has no right to interfere in a girl's private life. The lady realized that rumors started spreading right in the middle of the party. After all, it's only been a few days, the whole empire already knows about it. And that's not all. In addition to the mainstream news, people started spreading horrible rumors that Elsa was the mistress of Theodore, whom Adelaide loved. It's just impossible to listen to anymore. How could you spread gossip about how the guy she's avoiding is supposedly her lover, who she stole from her husband's mistress? The girl felt that literally everyone around her was against her, even though she hadn't even done anything wrong. On the contrary, she had been betrayed and deceived all this time. Besides, the girl used to be on good terms with Adelaide, so she can't understand why she'd do this to her all of a sudden. At this point, the Empress asked the girl to raise her head and look at her. She means to say that since the ears of her knight's honor have been disgraced by such news, she will not stand by. Elsa doesn't understand what this means, since it sounds like Maria wants revenge for something. Elsa already regretted coming to talk, for it would have been much better not to do so. Maria believes that the girl should be grateful for her kindness, because she chose a new husband for her, so that she would not be upset and soon forget about the past. When Elsa heard this, she did not hold back and began to be indignant, for what did Mr. Theodore have to do with her broken engagement? In reply, the Empress said only that the girl did not understand anything about such matters. Maria said that one scandal can easily be covered up by another, which is exactly what she is trying to help her with. The Empress suggests that the wild dog should be under her complete control. But is she really so bored that she started getting involved in other people's personal lives? Maria offers to switch to another guy just so everyone will forget about the broken engagement as soon as possible. For a moment, the girl suddenly realized that perhaps their interests might coincide, and she resented the Empress's plan for nothing. Except it's going to take a lot of work to make everyone forget about the recent scandal. But at least she will live. But if she has to be with Mr. Theodore, unfortunately the girl must refuse. She was willing to agree to be with anyone but this man, and when she told the Empress this, she did so with her head down so as not to look her in the eye. Maria was upset, for she thought it would be much easier and the lady would not put any conditions on it. In that case, she decided to offer an option that should be beneficial to each of them. The Empress has offered a 10% pay raise. She's sure that after that, Elsa won't be able to resist. And of course, it was a win-win. The girl knew what she could interest Elsa in, and what she definitely wouldn't give up on. Girl thought that she could hardly do otherwise and refuse such an offer, for at the very least she would have extra money. In fact, the Empress wouldn't have succeeded if the girl didn't have more debts in her family. Or rather, her parents did. And if one day, a girl hadn't told strangers about her personal problems, things might have been very different. After the conversation, the lady came to Mr. Theodore to say something to him. And surprisingly, after all that had passed between them, he was even glad to see her. Elsa said that since now he is her assistant, in the future, if he disobeys her orders, the punishment will be harsher than other knights. Theodore smiled and said he would try not to disappoint her, at least not anytime soon. As if he suddenly vanished into thin air and moved to another place, Elsa did not even have time to realize what had just happened and why he did it. The guy purposely appeared behind her back to get closer and remind her how he felt about her. The girl got angry and asked if he was afraid to take such a big risk. In response, he as well questioned what was so surprising about it. She ordered him to remove his hands, or else he would regret it very much and would never be able to do it again. Theodore reminded her that she was still forgetting that he was her dog, so if she wanted to push him away like that, it was the opposite of pushing him to act. He told one very interesting fact about himself, namely, that when something is forbidden to him, he deliberately brings it to an end and never obeys it. So it's dangerous for him to say the word no or forbid anything. It works exactly the opposite for him. For a moment he was suddenly curious to ask if she was afraid of the wild dog, that is, of his... Elsa doesn't even know how to react, because lately, the only thing she's really afraid of is betrayal by someone she trusts. And if it happens one more time, she won't survive it, because the way she felt at that moment is beyond words. And yet she replied that there was nothing in this world that could make her afraid, except in the case of her loved ones. The guy replied that in that case she should tighten his leash, sounding very unusual, but at the same time, a bit alarming. Elsa asked what leash he was talking about, and what it meant, when suddenly he touched her hand and said that next to her, it was very difficult for him to control himself. From this moment, he asked that the mistress should address him as Theo, for that, he said, would be the leash for the wild dogs. Screams. So many people. They call her a witch and a traitor. The girl can't move and doesn't understand, really. All these people are addressing her. She can't explain anything. No one listens to her, and everyone wants to get rid of the traitor right here and now. Elsa starts screaming violently, and it turns out it was just another scary dream that felt as realistic as it could possibly be. In fact, it's not the first time. This dream has happened several times before, and despite that, it scares her like it's the first time. The lady looked at the time and realized that it would be impossible to fall asleep after this. Sleep is something you cannot even hope for. Luckily, she didn't stay on the bed long at all, and just an hour later, the sun came out. The lady went down to the first floor where her assistants were already at work. She said she had another nightmare, and it was the same one she had last time. After that, the assistant suggested breakfast. Today she prepared a dish of vegetables and baked bread, and even at that moment, Elsa asked if the woman had ever dreamed that many people wanted to destroy her. The assistant tried to remember something, but she failed. Mostly she doesn't dream about anything like that, and if there was something, she would definitely remember it. After that, she remembered that if someone has a dream like that, it's good luck. And in general, the woman advised not to give much importance to any dream. I wish the girl could agree with that, but she thinks the reason she's been having nightmares lately is because she's tired and stressed out. Maybe she'll feel better after breakfast because, as you know, if you're hungry, you get bad thoughts and moods. In order not to upset the assistant, the girl tried to smile and pretend that everything was already fine. This afternoon, she's supposed to talk to her assistant about something, but for some reason, she's late and keeps him waiting. As soon as she came into the office, he said so and asked what was the reason, because he also had a lot of things to do. Elsa apologized and said that she didn't need to be reminded of that at all. She already knew she was a little delayed. It's been 2 days since Theodore was appointed her assistant, and because of that, she's already freaking out. He's constantly in her office and acting too proper. It's like he's only doing it to point out her flaws and be better than her. Eventually, with every word he says, she gets angrier and angrier, even though he's just doing his job. At one point, she asked that he stop calling her mistress, just saying her name would be enough. In response, he dismissed such a rule and said that she had no right to make such a point, for he had the right to decide who to address and how to address him. Patience becomes less and less. The lady herself does not understand why he annoys her so much. After all, there is nothing special in his words. He even talks to her calmly and tries to be polite, but even that doesn't improve her attitude towards Theo. Apparently, no matter how hard he tries to please or do his job well, he'll never get a good attitude. Once again, he walked over to her and hinted that the more she yelled at him and started to resent him, the more he wanted to be closer. And the most frightening thing is that Theodore has never been able to and cannot control it. She is very lucky that so far, by some miracle, he's been able to keep himself in check. Since the lady had already warned him not to do that, this time, she didn't stand for it and punished him for this behavior. Because he does allow himself to overindulge, which is inappropriate in a working relationship. But no matter how hard Elsa tries to do something about it, her assistant's not gonna stop. Obviously, this wasn't the last time he was trying to get closer. It's scary for the lady that she doesn't even know what his intentions are. Genuine feelings or something to do with gain. It's very frightening to her that even in these situations, he's completely calm and doesn't seem at all like her reaction is making him stop and think about his behavior. She's not succeeding at scaring him or avoiding him, just nothing. He's proving to be much more persistent than she imagined. Elsa doesn't believe it's because of any feelings or desire to be together. This guy is not someone who is interested in a relationship. And that's when Veronica walks into the office. She came to say she was going to the main office, but she didn't expect to see this. She doesn't even have the words to describe what she just thought, Veronica asked. Is this really her bad timing? Elsa was even more angry, because now Veronica had gotten it wrong and it was just another excuse to spread another rumor. It's like she'd rather not leave her room at all to avoid embarrassing situations. Before leaving, Theo asked why the mistress was always yelling at him, since he was doing his job and only came over to supposedly pick up her cloak. Sounding too unconvincing, the girl immediately realized that he only said it to appear nice to Veronica and not to look guilty. Afterward, Elsa asked if she had heard that she was going to the main office. The girl replied that she had indeed planned to go there. And then the lady turned to the lad and asked him to go with Lady Veronica to see these documents. According to her, it's a great opportunity for him to learn about the work of senior companions from Lady Veronica, but really, she just wants to get rid of him for a while. The longer he's here, the more nervous she gets, and to be alone, and all she has to do is send him off on some errand. Once again, he called her mistress. She's definitely holding back with all her might. So the girl gave him even more tasks to do, so he definitely didn't have time to call her anything she asked not to be called. The assistant understood and called her mistress again. He smiled and promised he would get it done as soon as possible. After that, the two set off through a very beautiful garden, all around so beautiful that they didn't even feel like talking about anything bad. Veronica looks at him like she wants to say something. The guy notices it right away and suggests we stop to talk about it. Theodore asked why she was looking at him like that, but in response, the girl said something he certainly couldn't expect from her. Veronica admitted that he was simply irresistible. Lest he should think that Veronica was beginning to fall in love, the lady continued the phrase and said that if he smiled a lot, he would win a lot of girls. Did she really like his looks so much that she couldn't even keep quiet about it? But the guy didn't even seem to give it a second thought. He replied that the only girl he was interested in at the moment was his mistress, Lady Elsa. It's hard for him to explain why she's so attracted to him, but every time they're together, it's like some kind of magnet goes off. It seems someone didn't think it was necessary to tell the girl who almost confessed her feelings to him. Veronica pretended not to understand anything, although in fact she became a little offended, because how could one say such words after she had openly dealt him compliments? They ended up being silent the rest of the way, each thinking about their own things. After a few minutes, they arrived at the main office building. Since the girl's assignment was to tell him of his new duties, she began to tell him about it right away. From now on, Theodore should be on the alert. Because their senior colleagues are very picky, it is important not to forget that there are no friends here, and every time, before helping someone or telling someone something, you need to think whether it will be a mistake. Meanwhile, Elsa took the time to read a book that Theodore gave her, and strangely enough, it's called There Are No Bad Dogs. He calls himself a dog all the time, like all other people. But really, this book, it's like a hint of how you should treat him. The first page talks about the importance of walks, because every dog in the world loves to walk. Walks help to relieve stress, find a common language with other words. It is a natural necessity for any creature. Elsa thought about the first paragraph, and realized that it was probably definitely a hint, although it was very strange to read a book about dogs that were given by a human being. She even thought that maybe he would be better behaved after the walk. The girl couldn't believe she was even reading this book. Because of the nightmare, she never got a proper night's sleep. Sitting at her desk really makes her want to put her head down and lie down for a few hours. At some point, Elsa thought that she had given so much to do that the helpers definitely wouldn't bother her for a while longer, so decided to tide her over and relax a bit more. At the same second, the door opens and she hears Veronica's joyful voice. The girl said they did everything and it was unforgettable. Aristocrats very quickly agreed to cooperate and, she said, it was all thanks to Mr. Theodore. Mrs. praised the quick work and asked for an explanation of what they had done that made them come back in good spirits. Veronica said that as soon as they arrived at the main office, the three aristocrats froze at the mere sight of Mr. Theodore. At that moment, it was as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Afterwards, she was anxious to boast of it to Mr. Morris, so she left them alone and went off on business. At this point, the mistress wants to know only one thing: how her assistant, who has never done it, managed to find common ground with aristocrats who never make concessions. He really surprised with his work and deserved a bonus day off. The guy proved he is a good helper and can do anything asked of him. Well, it turned out that even he could be useful. It was very unexpected, but at the same time it was nice. He solved one of the most important problems. Elsa realized that he was probably the one who was always tidying up her office, because a few days ago it had been cluttered with papers, but now it was as cozy and comfortable as ever. In a way, she even felt sorry for him. She kept blaming the guy and thinking nothing good would come of it, but he proved to be a very diligent helper and proved that he knows how to do his job, not only just to get the job done, he does it well and quickly. At some point, the girl got embarrassed and realized that she had been looking at him for a very long time. She didn't even realize how it had happened. The girl, though, was looking at him. But in fact, that look was blurred, and at that moment, as it turned out, the guy was looking back at her, and all the while, smiling. He got a very sweet look in his eyes. Theodore relaxed and realized he had finally gained her respect. Surprisingly, Mistress admitted, she was too hard on him. And sometimes even too much of it. She was too embarrassed and wanted to drink water, but even that was difficult. She took one sip and almost choked on it. Every time Theodore looks at her more and more intently, as if he wants to get closer. But he's afraid he'll ruin his reputation again. Elsa couldn't stand it, and decided that there was only one way to drive him away. To tell him that the working day was coming to an end. Instead of being happy and leaving, the assistant asked what about the theft case she had recently assigned to her. In response, the mistress said that this week she would only let him get used to paperwork for now, and he didn't have to do anything serious. He'd already done a good job, but since he didn't want to rest, she suggested he patrol the streets. But strangely enough, she offered to do it with her, and of course the guy said yes. Most likely, after the first paragraph in the book about walking the dog, the girl decided to experiment and walk with him under the guise of patrolling the streets. At the same time, she told him about the nearest streets, so that in the future, he would be able to navigate here and not get lost. The neighborhood is a rich and peaceful area, but, she said, one should still be vigilant because even here, crime sometimes happens. The girl said that from now on, he'd go out and patrol the nearby streets more often. Theodore asked if he would be alone, or also with her. Elsa replied that for the next few months, she would so-and-so help out and go out together. And of course, immediately after these words, his mood instantly improved, because it meant that they would be around more often. Mistress hinted that he was getting too close, and surprisingly, as soon as she said it, he immediately apologized and moved away. The boy became noticeably obedient. She even thought that all thanks to the advice from the book. The main thing that the assistant did not think that the walk, patrolling the streets, and the gifted book somehow linked. At some point, they heard a sound and immediately stopped. It was very loud and unexpected. The girl thought it definitely happened in that dark place. She had obviously heard the sound from there. Instead of standing still and trying to hide, Theodore reacted quickly, drew his sword, and decided to check what was inside. He wasn't afraid and decided to be brave, especially in the presence of his mistress. It was the perfect situation to earn even more respect. Afterward, they saw someone's red eye and thought some huge animal was looking at them. It was just a second later, and out of the darkness came a very small and cute kitten. And as we know, all goths can sometimes have glowing eyes, especially in the darkness. So there's nothing more for them to do here. They need to move on and waste their time on more dangerous criminals than a little cat. It turns out that at that moment, in the darkness was hiding some man. And in fact, it was he who created the noise that they heard a few minutes ago. He was very lucky that out of the darkness came a kitten who took all suspicions on himself. Which means it's likely the knights missed a criminal who may have wanted to steal something. The thing is that in this neighborhood for a really, really long time, they're looking for a man who steals things all the time, and for a long time nobody can find him. Which means that just now, if there hadn't been a kitten in that dark place, they would have found the culprit and closed the case. On the way, Elsa told me about this man. They call him the Marshmallow. He robs the houses of the aristocrats in the area and does it very professionally. The boy said that if he was really called Zephyr, it was usually the name of the god of the west winds. The girl replied that it was true. The criminal got that nickname because of his ability to move like the wind. If they only knew what she really was. This man is too close, and just a few minutes ago, he was right behind the wall, a few meters away. The guy offered to take another lap to make sure the locals weren't threatened. Madam felt it was unnecessary and suggested that we end the patrol. Besides, she was very tired and not used to walking so much. But for some reason, it's like the guy feels like it's best not to leave now. He wants to stay and be here a little longer. He even admitted that it's so nice here that he doesn't want to go back at all. The girl thought he was acting like a real dog, although in reality, humans also can enjoy a walk and don't always want to go home. At this point, she's making a very big mistake. And she's also recently said that even here, you have to pay attention and look around. Because at that moment, behind her was the criminal who steals things. He was so brave that he wasn't afraid to approach her. He came at an incredible speed and started to take her backpack away from her. This man has his face covered and his entire body covered by a large cloak. Elsa couldn't even imagine that this man would dare to approach her. A knight in charge of apprehending such people. Theodore saw it and couldn't believe his eyes. He made sure that he didn't want to stay and walk the streets one more time for nothing. At this point, the lady slipped and hurt her foot again. It hurt her very badly to stand, much less try to deal with the criminal. The guy offered his help, a new response. Elsa said it was okay, though in truth, he was genuinely very scared for her. Actually, she's not thinking so much about her leg as she is about the bag she just had stolen. The thief ran away at breakneck speed. And because of that, she's in a bad mood. Because there are a lot of important things and documents that she can't lose. Theodore is sure it's the same Marshmallow that the knights haven't been able to catch in years. And he doesn't really want to chase after the super fast man. In reply, the mistress began to shout very loudly and said that this was an order, and if he did not return her bag, she would very quickly think up a punishment for him. Or simply, he had no choice but to run after the thief, because if the girl really thought of firing him, it would be the cruelest and most terrible punishment for him. Although it's a bit unfair, really, as he wasn't the one who stole the bag from her, and it's very strange to hope that he can get it back, as that man is very quick and professional at what he does. It is not a problem for him to hide in a safe place. He knows the area very well, and always has a plan on which route to take to escape. It turns out that even if one of the knights spots him, it doesn't mean they'll be able to catch him. Knowing this, many people immediately refuse to run after him, because it takes effort, time, and in the end, there is no guarantee that everything will work out. But the guy's in a special situation right now. He wants to win the girl and he has no right to let this bad boy get away. Even if it's impossible, he has to do it, or he'll lose the chance to be with Elsa. By some miracle, he managed to track this man down, and that's when the fun begins. As soon as he took a swing at him, then immediately slipped away and ran off again with the bag. Though really, there's no surprise here. If the guy has the strength and patience, it all depends on how much he wants to be with the girl. Theodore has no intention of giving up, and has decided that if it takes running after him until the evening or morning, that's the way it'll be done. He did not return to the mistress without her bag, for if he returned without it, he would lose her and his job forever. Only suddenly, a miracle happened. He managed to catch the culprit and even make it impossible for him to escape. The guy walked up to him and asked him how he even dared to approach his mistress, and also hinted that this was the last time he would steal something from someone else. It turns out this is the only time anyone has managed to catch up with him. Very interesting to see what happens next and how he reacts to this situation. She probably wouldn't even realize Theodore had it, because even the most professional knights couldn't do that. And he, who had only been working for a few days, was able to do something impossible, as suddenly he heard the voice of the mistress asking him to stop. She said that's his enough. The important thing is that the perpetrator is caught, and so is her bag. Destroying and punishing him in this way is not at all necessary. Elsa admitted that she only asked him to chase down the perpetrator to be alone. She didn't even think he was serious about running to return her bag. The first thing he looked at was her leg, but it seemed to be fine. The girl was able to move around and even walked a few streets. Although initially it looked like she wouldn't be able to take a single step, but luckily it all worked out and she's fine. After that, Maris suddenly came up to them. Theodore was surprised at first, but after that he was told everything. It turned out that it wasn't the real criminal and the bag snatching. In fact, it was just an initiation party for the newcomer. He was just being tested. It was something like an exam. Now I see why the girl pretended not to notice the thief's approach at all. Though with her experience, she should have caught him at the same second. Surprisingly, he didn't even notice that all this time, his colleagues were watching him. Apparently he wanted to return the bag so badly that he didn't even look around and was focused only on it. Elsa said she was sorry that they had to cheat on him, but they had all been through it at least once, so she asked him not to get too upset. After that, the girl came up to him and said that it was now official. She was welcoming him into the ranks of the knights. At some point, she realized that if she had come up even a minute later, Theodore could have destroyed that guy, because he saw the situation as real, and yet, he's very interested to see the face of the man he's just chased. He hasn't seen such fast people before. After that, everyone decided to go inside, as the others were already waiting for them. And after that, Elsa remembered another person who could use some praise as well. This is the same guy who pretended to be a villain and was running away with her bag. He did his role so well he deserves to join the party and be one of them. He actually had a very realistic game that Theodore didn't even doubt. At one point, no one even noticed that the guy never commented because he was actually pretty scared that Theodore might have destroyed him. He's afraid to even look him in the eye and regretted agreeing to this at all. It's turning out to be a lot more dangerous than he thought it would be. Right after that, everyone went to rest and have fun. It was a planned party, except I wonder if it would have taken place if Theodore had failed and caught up with the culprit. All the while, the curly-haired Veronica was busy setting the table, washing dishes and other preparations. She is very curious to know how it went. She said she thought they would be back much sooner. Elsa apologized and explained that things didn't go according to plan. She didn't think it would take this long. Maris revealed that Theodore was the only one who didn't give up and was actually able to catch up to the fake criminal. At some point, everyone noticed that the commander was missing. They looked around, but he was nowhere to be found. Then, the guy suggested to stop talking about work because all they do is bring up some problems. Everyone is here to rest, so we need to rest. Of course, Theodore was pleased that he had successfully passed the test, and at this moment, his self-esteem was noticeably raised because at one time, no one else present had been able to cope with it. In the end, there was a lot of food on the table, the girls did a good job and cooked a lot of stuff. It all looks incredibly appetizing. All were asked to take their seats, And before the party began, Maris asked for everyone's attention. He would like Elsa, as their deputy commander, to comment on the day and have some words to say. Elsa said the following: as everyone knows, they are here to welcome Mr. Theodore as the new man on this team. She asked that everyone else treat him well and not put themselves above him just because they have more experience, because somehow it turned out today, experience and quantity is not the main thing. The main thing is quality. In fact, the girl that he showed such a side of himself, he showed himself brave, quick, and responsible. That's exactly what she was looking for. Everyone began to celebrate and rejoice, as if each of them had been in his shoes today. The guy looked at her with a look like he had already succeeded. He was very pleased to hear her say such words. And it was not only nice. The girl raised his authority and importance in the team. For a moment, Mistress noticed a strange atmosphere. It was not at all like that to which she was accustomed during such sit-downs. It's too quiet for a party to be held in honor of such an important and special occasion. Afterward, she looked in Theodore's direction and wondered why this was happening. She doesn't understand why everyone is so quiet and doesn't even talk, because usually on days like this there is a lot of noise and they can't be stopped. Only Veronica tries to cheer everyone up, but in the end people are still silent, as if they are forbidden to talk and have fun. At one point, the girl came up to Theodore and thanked him for his help. The guy asked what that meant because really, he hadn't done anything special. Turns out she had to go to the main office with the report. But since she didn't even have to do anything, and he talked to these people himself, even without training, he made her job very much easier. She immediately told her co-workers about it and told them about her impressions, because she really didn't have to do anything. If it wasn't for him, she would have been like in the office until the evening. At this point, Elsa felt sad and decided to leave. She saw that no one was paying attention to her and didn't want to stay. Not surprisingly, the second she took a step towards the exit, Theodore noticed it. He stopped her and asked her if she was going to. The girl was immediately the center of attention, though she just wanted to leave quietly and be alone. But instead, everyone, without exception, looked in her direction and wanted to hear an answer. Theodore smiled and said that he didn't want to stay at the party without her, because it was so much better and more fun with her there. At one point, when the guy realized she didn't know what to say, he decided to do it instead. The guy said he actually owed her a debt of gratitude. She felt much better, but at the same time, very curious about what he was trying to say and what it meant. Everyone wondered how a man like Theodore could be in debt to her, and what must happen for him to owe her a favor. Everyone started asking for details, especially the guy, because he was the first one to talk about it. And in their opinion, he should explain everything. He started to keep a little suspense to make it more interesting for everyone to listen to him. The mistress decided to take the moment to leave unnoticed again, for she had had enough of this strange atmosphere. She wasn't even interested in listening to what the guy meant. At one point, Veronica suggested not dwelling on the problems, but instead asking him questions to get to know her new co-worker better. But that's not all. The girl offers to arrange a game in case the guy refuses to answer some question. He is obliged to drink some unpalatable drink. She even brought a special ingredient, and she thinks it should enhance the flavor of anything. It turns out it's the same bottle that was in the commander's office. There were so many of them that she only took one away. At this point, another girl suggested another game, because in her opinion, you don't have to drink any beverages to get to know a person, especially unpalatable ones, which can really spoil the mood, as suddenly Elsa returned, curious to see if he would like to play the game that Veronica was proposing. She eventually joined the game and agreed to play a game, but only the one that Veronica suggested. It's very strange, but it really came back just for the sake of it. Finally, it's evening. The party is slowly coming to an end. Everyone is very tired and wants to rest and decided to go outside to get some fresh air. And she doesn't seem to be feeling very well. She had too many drinks, got a bad headache, and felt so bad she couldn't even remember the last time she felt this awful. Morris found that as soon as morning came, she would feel much better. The main thing was to be patient and go to her room to rest, because staying at the party would not make it any better. She's so bad she can't talk or look around either. She doesn't even fully realize who she's talking to right now. The girl had already regretted more than once that she had decided to come back and agree to play the game, because usually, She knew very well that it didn't end up in a good way. And if she'd just gone home and not been tempted, it would have been better. At least she wouldn't have felt so bad. She asked the guy to forget about the party, because she was very ashamed that she, as deputy commander, had behaved in a bad way. Even though it was supposed to be an example to each of them, it ended up working out the way it did. Either way, she's very glad that no one is judging her for it. Everyone is just the same, regretting playing this game and not spending this evening in some other, safer and more peaceful way. Even Morris, who played the least, he's the same way. Not very good. But at least you can't tell anything from the looks of it. Every time she starts answering his questions, it gets a little easier. She looks at him normally now and even can walk. At some point, they heard a strange sound and decided to go back inside, because it looked like something had happened inside. The girl was very frightened because she was afraid that someone got sick or someone hit someone, but in fact it's a little bit wrong. Everyone went up to Theodore to wake him up, but he didn't wake up at all. He just wasn't used to such parties and fell asleep very quickly. It's like he's just unconscious, he can't hear or respond to touch. It's quite comfortable on a hard table, but how to get it into the room is a very big question. No one believes that he will wake up in the next few hours, and to deal with the matter, it will have to be dealt with. No one can go away leaving him here, in this state and condition. After some time, someone decided to talk to the Empress. Surprisingly, the girl is still awake and still sitting in her office. She let me in because she had almost finished her work and wasn't busy, and she happened to be in a good mood. It turns out it's just her assistant who came to remind her that it's time to rest. The girl was upset because she didn't have time to finish a very important job. It turns out that the assistant already knows what to do in such cases. It was enough to remind that the girl is the future of the country, and she needs to go to bed early to grow and gain strength. The main thing is to say it in a pleasant voice, and not to accuse in anything. Surprisingly, even though she's the Empress, she listens to her assistant as she did years ago. Only next to her, the girl does not resist and does what she is told. The Empress did not resist and said that in a few minutes, she will already be in her room. It turns out that before going to bed, every day she likes to look out the window or admire the starry sky. This view is very soothing and relaxing after a hard day. What's going on with her nights at this moment is that they're trying to pick up Theodore and carry him into the room. Elsa was the first to do it. She lifted him up and didn't expect the guy to be so heavy, because from the looks of it, he wasn't as big as he turned out to be. The girl looked at her helpers and was surprised that no one even said a word about helping, especially the guys. They justify it by saying they're afraid to go near him. Nobody wants to be in the shoes of the guy he almost destroyed. She ended up having to carry him by herself. No one has any idea how hard and frustrating that is when someone else, stronger, could have done it. Suddenly, a miracle happened. Maris came up and offered his help. Elsa was very happy, although it would have been nice if he had come a little earlier, so she didn't have to lift the guy up and hurt his back. Eventually, they were able to get him outside, and of course that made her feel much better that way. She didn't think Theodore would be so heavy, or even that the party would end this way. If she knew, she'd never have arranged it or even agreed to play it. Eventually, the girl got into a carriage with her boyfriend and went home. The deputy went back into the building to see how everyone else was doing. Veronica came up to him at once and said that she was very glad to see him, which meant that it was time for her to rest, just like everyone else. Literally seconds later, her mood changed and she began to sway and accuse him of letting Theodore leave. The guy realizes that it's pointless for him to answer these questions, because the girl herself doesn't understand what she's doing. And after that, the best part was when she got away from him and decided to confess her feelings. She said that she had liked him for a long time, and she didn't know how to tell him. Her voice was getting quieter and quieter with each table. Maris hadn't expected her to say that, but now was not the best time to discuss something like that. He had always known that the girl was in love with him. It was very interesting to know whether the feelings were mutual, for if so, she was very lucky that she had told him in such a state without even realizing it. The guy looked at her like he'd been waiting his whole life for her to say those words. But did he really want to continue the conversation and tell her it was mutual? Meanwhile, Elsa is still on her way, and to cheer you up at least a little bit, she looked out the window and started to admire the stars, because it's a very beautiful sight indeed. She didn't notice how much better it felt, like the party had never happened. All she had to do was figure out how to get the guy to his room. Says for sure no one will be around to help them, as Maris did. The girl looked at him and wondered if she was completely confused and didn't know what she really thought of him. The whole just a few days ago, she hated him and constantly avoided him. She was disgusted to even be in his presence or hear his voice. And now she's helping him home, and she's not looking at him with that ominous look she had a few days ago. Like suddenly, the guy woke up and asked what he was doing here. He really doesn't remember anything from the moment he had his first drink. The girl says it's okay and they're going home. It's late and the party's over. At this moment, he got too hot, just decided to get rid of the hot jacket. Mistress immediately got embarrassed and asked if it was necessary to do it right now. She pressed him to stop, because she wouldn't be able to talk to him properly and be in this map. When suddenly, there was some inconspicuous rock on the road that very suddenly went astray. It was very tangible. The girl didn't even notice how she was thrown to his side. She was right in his arms. This is the most awkward situation she's been in since they've known each other. She doesn't even know what to say or how to react. But out of habit, she wants to blame it on him again. Although the girl understands perfectly well that it's nobody's fault. If he were sitting in her shoes, the exact same situation would have happened. She decided to go back to her seat so he would be more comfortable riding. But at that moment, he took her hand and asked her to stop. He didn't let her get distant and instead said it wasn't necessary, because he'd be happy to spend the rest of the trip closer to her. It was another situation in which he found it very difficult to control himself, and he apologized and said that from now on, he was not responsible for his behavior. Surprisingly, unlike how it usually goes, she didn't start hitting him and running away the second he did it. If she's got any feelings and she's okay with whatever's about to happen, it's as if something stops her and forces her not to resist. The girl doesn't understand what it is, for she has no desire at all to do what she used to do. On the contrary, she's very comfortable and wants him to keep going. Elsa doesn't understand what's happening to her and why she doesn't even try to stop it. She looks into his eyes and wants it to last as long as possible. At this point, Theodore asked that she not be nervous and try to calm down, and also promised that everything would be all right. The main thing was that she should trust him and not be afraid of anything. At this moment, looking at him up close, he seemed even more beautiful to her than ever. She even thought that maybe she really shouldn't resist him. At this moment, she thinks only about the fact that later on she will not regret anything, and no one will know about this situation. Because if this happens, it can be considered that her reputation, which she has created throughout her life, will be over. At the same time, she doesn't want to stop. She's got a choice to make, a choice that will determine the rest of her life. Because if she agrees and doesn't forbid him to do it, then the next day, you have to accept the fact that either they have a relationship or they promise each other that they will never tell anyone about it. As soon as she had the thought to start resisting, and it was as if her arms stopped obeying and wouldn't let her do it. Elsa will really be that if she does what she wants to do now, she will regret it very much. But it seems too late to think about it. Theodore is close by and he's about to kiss her as he's dreamed of doing since the first day he met her. Amazing. But just a few days ago, she never thought it could happen right in the carriage. What she feels at this moment is simply impossible to put into words. It's an amazing feeling she's never experienced before.